Can you rename yourself? I know everyone's gonna sign in as me. I think I have your name right. Samantha, can you try to rename yourself? Everyone is gonna have to sign in as me because I share my link.
Okay, let's see.
Well, there should be like three dots up there.
Yeah, it doesn't give me that option. It doesn't have the 3 dots, unfortunately.
You guys set it up as a webinar. It wasn't a meeting. So that's why they couldn't talk.
Yeah, because you guys were signing, he was signing as an attendees.
Yeah,
Who is this person I'm renaming now?
attendee in a web.
Okay, Mark. So I hope Diana got it. I'm sorry. I'm just gonna put you guys' first name for now because that's all I can remember. And then we'll start the meeting and then we'll fix it. Okay, let me see if, oh, she is on. Perfect. Let me rename our mayor first, and then we could go start the meeting. The attendees will be joining us.
Excellent, great. It is now 6:39 p.m. I would like to call the Design Review Board meeting of March 4th, 2021 to order. Before I proceed, I want to take a moment to go over our meeting protocols for today. We are continuing to have our meeting in a virtual meeting setting to ensure the health and safety of the public by limiting human contact that could spread the COVID-19 virus. This meeting may be viewed online live. In an effort to best facilitate dialogue and discussion during today's meeting, I'm going to ask that the board be mindful of muting their microphones when not speaking. I will call on board members to speak on each item one by one. I thank you all for your patience as we proceed with our meeting today. So roll call. Will staff note that the following individuals are present? Board Member Carlson, Board Member Smeaton, Board Member Younger, Vice Chair Sai, and myself. We are all present. Our council liaison, Mayor Mahmood, planning manager, Kanika Kith, and staff liaison, Melinda Lim, are also present. So we will now move into the approval of the agenda. Board and staff, do you have any requests for additions or revisions to the agenda? If you do, please just raise your hand. Okay, I see a lot of heads shaking no. So seeing no request, I would like a vote of the board to proceed with the approval of the agenda as submitted. So I will take a roll call. Vice Chair Sai.
Approved.
Board Member Younger.
Approved.
Board Member Smeaton.
Approved.
Board Member Carlson.
Approved.
Great, and myself approved. Perfect. So next is the disclosure of the Board of Site visits and ex parte contact for items on today's agenda. Vice Chair Sai.
I have not been to any of the sites or been in contact with anyone related to the project.
Great. Board Member Younger.
I have not been in contact with anyone related to any projects, but I have driven past the Krispy Kreme building and I'm looking forward to that.
Me too. Board Member Smeaton.
I have not either. I have not spoken with any of the applicants or visited any of the sites.
Board Member Carlson.
I have not spoken with any of the applicants. I I'm at pavilions regularly, but that's it.
Excellent. And same for myself. I haven't spoken with any of the applicants. I have been past the sites, but I haven't visited them with the applicants or had any discussions regarding the projects. Okay, so we will now move into the public comments and suggestion. The Design Review Board welcomes public input. Members of the public were asked to provide comments by noon today. Pursuant to state law, this board may not discuss or take actions on issues not on the meeting agenda, except that members of the board or staff may briefly respond to statements made or questions. Staff may be asked to follow up on such items. Staff, did we receive any general public comments or suggestions?
Madam Chair, no, we did not.
Great, thank you. So in that case, we will now move into the public hearing portion. We have two public items on our agenda tonight. Our first item was continued from our last meeting. It is the sign permit for pavilions. And before we proceed, I will ask that board member Smeaton please recuse himself. Once the item commences, I'll invite him back. Thank you, Mark. Can he just turn off his video or do we need to remove him? There we go. Excellent. Okay, great. Staff, could you please provide the report?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good evening. This presentation is a sign permit review for Pavilion's Shopping Center located at 1213 Fair Oaks Avenue, project number 2343 SGN. At the last DRB meeting, the board approved the Pavilion's remodel and landscaping improvements, but continued the sign permit review to tonight's hearing. The project includes 3 new wall signs facing Fair Oaks Avenue, 1 new wall sign facing Monterey Avenue, and refacing the existing monument sign and repainting it to match the building. The location of the signs are shown here, with A, B, C, and E as the wall signs, and F being the location of existing monument sign at the corner. At previous hearings, the project had too many signs and the total sign area exceeded the amount allowed by the zoning regulations. Staff has requested that the applicant further reduce the total sign area to not exceed the limit of 200 square feet of signage per use. For maximum sign area, the city zoning regulations allow 1 square foot of sign area for each linear foot of primary building frontage, and for the secondary frontage allows a ½ square foot for each linear foot of secondary frontage. The total area of all signs on a single building frontage cannot exceed the total linear feet of that frontage, and no more than 200 square feet is allowed per use. As proposed, the primary frontage signage is at 200 square feet. In total, all wall and monument signage now results in 247.7 square feet, an overage of 47.7 square feet. A condition has therefore been added to reduce the total square footage of all signage to be within the 200 square foot maximum, and for the chair of the board to review and approve the plans prior to submitting a building permit. According to zoning regulations 36.32.030, table 3-9, a single tenant site such as pavilions may have 3 of any allowed sign types per primary building frontage and 1 of any allowed sign type per secondary frontage. The primary frontage here is Fair Oaks Avenue, and the applicant now shows 3 wall signs. For secondary frontages, namely Monterey Road and Linden Street, 1 of any allowed sign types is permitted, and the plan proposes 2 signs, a new wall sign and 1 monument sign to be refaced along the Monterey Road frontage. The Linden Street frontage currently does not have signage and none is being proposed. Staff considers this consistent with zoning regulations to consolidate the 2 signs to 1 secondary frontage road in the area that is more commercial. Shown here are the proposed wall signs, which are internally illuminated channel letters for the pavilions and pharmacy signage, and 1 illuminated mounted Starbucks logo disc. This slide shows the existing monument sign on the left. The sign plan includes refacing and repainting the metal portions of the existing monument sign. No additional design changes are proposed. This slide shows the existing wall signs as it appears from the Fair Oaks Avenue frontage. And this slide shows what it would look like from a pedestrian perspective of the new wall signage. This shows the existing compared with what is being proposed on the north elevation sign wall. With that, staff recommends that the DRB approve the project subject to conditions, which also include reducing the total sign area by 47.7 square feet and with review and approval by the DRB chair. The DRB also has the option to approve with conditions added, continue the project to address comments discussed, or deny the project. This concludes staff's presentation. I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So this time we will, if any board members have questions for the staff, Vice Chair Sy, do you have any questions for the staff? I can't hear you, sorry. I think what we'll do is, Melissa, see if you can figure out the mute issue. I'm not sure if it's a dial-in concern, but I'll move over to Board Member Younger. Do you have any questions for the staff?
No, no questions.
Okay, great, thank you. Board Member Carlson, do you have
No.
any questions? No questions, okay. And let's see. It's interesting, Melissa, because when you mute it and unmute it, a phone comes up versus everyone else has a microphone. So I don't know if it has something to do with a dial-in.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Okay.
I can hear you now.
Okay.
Perfect.
I have no questions.
Okay, great, thank you. And I actually do have one question for the staff. So in going through the 200 square foot limit, that's per use, right? So, and I was looking at the code. So per use is based on the type of wall sign. Is that how it is? Like a wall or type of sign, whether it's a wall sign, a monumental sign, an awning sign. Is that correct?
The way we're interpreting it is per use is like the actual use of the property.
Oh, so it's not per use of the actual
wall.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Great. Thank you. Okay, so if there are no more questions for the staff, we will now open the public hearing portion. Staff, were there any public comments for this item?
It was not.
Okay, great. Thank you. Do we have a presentation from the applicant?
We do not have a presentation. I have forwarded them the link. I'm not sure if they're on right now. Maybe Melinda or Kanika could answer that.
Lisa, they are on. Is it Cedric and Paul?
Right, that is correct.
Okay. I'll go ahead and unmute them so they can speak.
Melinda, I have Cedric on right now. He's the applicant representative. Madam Chair, the applicant representative Cedric is on the line.
Hi, Cedric. Hello.
Hi there, how are you?
Hi.
I was going to, Paul Herman with Albertsons was going to address the signage today. I was going to pretty much listen to the comments and let Paul lead the way on the signage. And I think Tim Pitts was, the signage designer, was also going to join. I don't know whether he is part of the, whether he's connected or not, but I know Paul is. So if you could unmute Paul and let him address the signage, that would be great.
Madam Chair, Paul Herman is on the line.
Okay, great. Thank you. Hello, Paul. Can you hear us?
Yes, hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Paul.
Thank you. So our interpretation of the code was it doesn't state combined elevation. It does specifically call out primary and secondary frontage. So our interpretation of the code was that it was not a combined 200 square feet total for the property. In addition to that, if you're using a 4-line method to calculate the total square footage, we would be over the 47.7 square feet as it's currently designed with how staff interprets the code. However, if you take an 8-line method to calculate the square footage, we're actually under the total square footage by, I believe, 1.3 square feet. And my last comment was, I think architecturally and design-wise, it's sound to further reduce it if the code is interpreted that it's 200 square feet total for the property. The signs would be, I think, absurdly small on that building.
Okay, great. Thank you. Is there any other member from the applicant's team that would like to comment?
Well, this is Senator Craig. The only comment I would have is, we have a building that's not only a grocery store, but it has a Starbucks in it, and it also has a pharmacy. So, if you had, we actually have a building with multiple uses in it, although combined in one building. So I would think there would be some consideration for that as well. And that's my only comment.
Great. Thank you, Cedric. Is there anyone else from the applicant's team that would like to make a comment? Hearing none, we will now go into the question portion. So board members, this is a point where if you have questions for the applicant that you can ask. Board member Younger, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I don't, no questions.
Great, thank you. Board member Carlson, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Yes, just real quickly. The staff mentioned that the signs were internally illuminated, but they appear black. So I'm just curious what color they are when they're illuminated, or are they backlit, or are they kind of lights, from behind?
I'm not sure if you can hear me there, but excellent question. So it's a black perforated face. So during the day, it appears black. At night, however, when the light illuminates, or when it's lit up, it appears white.
Oh, I see. Okay. That was it. I was just curious if it was some other color.
Great, thank you, board member Carlson. Vice Chair Tsai, any questions? Oh, we're having the same issue.
I have no questions.
Okay, great, thank you.
I don't know what happened to my audio. My computer disconnected, so I had to call in.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And then questions that I have for the applicant. What was the sign that you were asked to remove? So there was one next to the Starbucks. Was that for another use?
Yes, it was. That was our drive up and go or e-commerce, where you can put an order in online and they would bring it out to your vehicle, which many of our other retailer competitors are doing. So we removed that sign from the front.
Are you going to be replacing that? Is there going to be signage elsewhere on the site in order to so people that are using the store know that it's there and where to go?
Excellent question, Mrs. Hill. If you recall, in one of the original site plans, it showed some parking spaces that were dedicated for customers that ordered online, could park, and it would identify where they were located in the parking field, so an associate could bring their groceries out to them. So there will be some signage in the parking lot, although that's not, it's enough to provide detail for them.
Got it. Okay, great. Thank you. And that was my only question for the applicant. So we will now close the public hearing portion. And we will have a discussion amongst ourselves. So I encourage each of the board members to unmute their microphone. I'll ask somebody to start the discussion and then we can kind of chime in as we feel it's relevant. Okay, so Vice Chair Sai, are you able to hear us?
I can hear you. Can
Okay,
you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Perfect. Okay, great. So if you wanted to, I don't know if you have anything to add in terms of the signage scope.
I think I like the signage package. I don't have any issues with it. I feel like it's balanced, simple and very straightforward. So that's all.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that.
Both of you too.
The one thing I will say that I know that what the code had said is there's the 200 square foot maximum that's allowed, and whether it's per frontage or not, or however it's interpreted. What concerns me with complying with that, and I understand that's the code, is that the Pavilion storefront is very far back. It's set back very far back from the right of way, from the public right of way, the sidewalk, and from the street. So I tend to agree with, I'm not sure if it was Paul, I think it was Paul's point or Cedric's point that, you know, if you start reducing that signage, it's almost going to become illegible, like not illegible, but it's going to be difficult to read it from certain distances. And just the nature of the site and it being set so far back from the street, from the public sidewalk, is a little bit of a concern for me. So you start reducing that and it's like, then what, if you can't read it, what's the point of having signage, right? That's the whole point of signage. So that's a little bit of a concern for me. I also, and I know I'm not the one interpreting the code, but I also would interpret, I got confused with use because I thought the same thing, that if you have multiple uses, Starbucks is a separate tenant in the store. That would be no different if you had a strip mall of multiple, if you had multiple tenants within that, I would assume it would be based on use. So is Starbucks counted towards that overall signage for a whole building? Is that the same? We apply that anywhere in the city? If it's just one building, but there's multiple tenants in it, why? I mean, I can refer to other existing, like, you know, the Bristol Farm area, that those have multiple tenants, multiple signs, definitely beyond 4. So I'm just trying to kind of understand where that.
Good point.
1 to 3.
Yeah, excellent point, Samantha. I'm absolutely unopposed to them all having what they need.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I tended to, because I think if as not even just from a design standpoint, but as a community member going to the store, I want to know what's at the store. So the fact that they're being asked to remove certain signage that takes away, I mean, signage is wayfinding. Signage is a way for the community members and users to find what's there. So I understand there's the element of balancing design. You also want to make it functional. And so I would argue that Starbucks should be considered a separate tenant and shouldn't even be included towards the overall use. I don't know.
Yeah, that also goes for people visiting. I mean, we go there all the time. We know what's there, but people passing by looking for the Starbucks, they need to see the sign.
Yep.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
May I provide some advice on that one? Is that the sign we had always calculated as 200 per use. Like, for example, when Grocery Outlet came in, we calculate the total sign there. They have 2 corner frontage and we add them up and they're 200. Ace Hardware is another big one too, where they have multiple sign on their building and we added their signage and it is per use. So, and we added their use. Now they have other retailers, vendors in there too. I think it's like a pet supply and hardware. We added those secondary signage because these are secondary signage and we added to the total signage to 200 for Ace Hardware in the same manner. And that is what we're applying here. I understand what you're talking about, how Starbucks may be interpreted as a different use, And if we want to go that route, then I would ask that this board continue this item, give staff an opportunity to discuss that separate use analysis for Starbucks with our city attorney. But, and I think what staff was recommending, correct me if I'm wrong, Melinda or Lisa, is that we're not recommending removing the Starbucks sign because that is a use in a store that's there. I think the recommendation was removing the other sign about the pickup. Is that what it is? And because we feel like if you don't reduce the pavilion sign because it's too far back, then maybe removing that sign about car pickup would not hurt the business. But if the board wanted to do the analysis of a separate use for Starbucks, then we would have to consult with our city attorney and review the code that way and understand how it's applied to other previous approval.
So I'm curious if the applicant's still on. I see that Paul is still on. I'm not sure if Cedric is, but is that something that you'd be interested in doing? Is, you know, I guess I'm trying to understand the importance of adding back that other sign for the pickup and the size of the, you know, is this something that you'd want to further review, or are you happy with where, or you're comfortable, I should say, with where, with the current package, signage package, with that condition that you have to reduce it by 47.7 square feet?
Thank you, Ms. Hill. We're comfortable with how the package has been redesigned and as presented this evening. Obviously, we're concerned about reducing it an additional 47.7 square feet.
If you were to, you know, I'm sure you've thought about this, do you have plans for how you would reduce the 47.7 square feet? Is it just shrinking the size of it, or is it removing signage? Or I'm just trying to kind of understand what the impact would be.
Sure, that's a great question. So even if you removed the pavilion sign on the north side of the building, which I think helps break up that elevation, even if you remove that completely, you would still have to significantly reduce the signs on the front of the building as well.
Got it.
Madam Chair, let me get clarification from our Lisa here. If you go to the staff report on page 207, which is one of two, on that staff report, it shows two elevation of signage. It looks like if you look at figure 3 and figure 2, it looks like figure 2 has a bigger signage and figure 3 has a design with smaller pavilion sign with only Starbucks and not the pickup. And under there, it says 200. Now, is that 200 is just for that one elevation, or is that 200 total? What I'm trying to understand is figure 3 is the one that we're recommending approval on, or we're recommending further reduction from figure 3?
We're recommending further reduction from figure 3. Figure 2 was the first time we saw it.
Okay.
Yeah, see, my concern in that case is we're starting to squeeze it down and down and down, and at some point it's going to be so far from the view, and I don't know if any view studies have been done. I'm assuming not. But it's pretty far back, and then suddenly you've got this tiny a sign that's not proportional to the building. It makes it more difficult to read. I mean, when you're in the parking lot, yes, but from the sidewalk, that would not be the case. I don't know how the other board members feel about that, but that's a concern for me if you're reducing it another 47.7 square feet and you're having to shrink everything down.
Well, I would point out, I guess, that in figure 3, the sign, the pavilion's logo particularly does feel a little bit large, but in the next image, it seems correct. It seems balanced. And but if it were much smaller on there, I think it would look odd.
I agree. I agree. Is there any way to figure out, I know that the use, the way that the use was interpreted was all frontages and all types of signage, but was it considered, when I looked at the code and seeing how it was broken down and with the table that's provided, I have to go to the code, table 3.9 sign standards for commercial zones. The way I interpreted it was based on use, wasn't just building use, but sign usage. So it's a table. So they're showing a wall sign versus freestanding versus awning. Is there any way to take out the monument sign from that overall 200 square foot calculation, or can you just not do that legally? Because if you could take that out, you at least then get that 17 square foot back, that that they don't have to reduce it by that much.
We had that same question, and that's why we went back to look at grocery outlet, and with grocery outlet, we did include the monument sign. If we could take out the monument sign from the calculation.
Okay, so it sounds like we can't remove that from the calculation.
Right.
I have a question. How much square feet did we reduce from figure 2 to 3?
I think that's a question for Paul.
Is Tim on the call? That maybe he can answer that question. Tim is our sign designer.
He is, and I'll go and bring him Tim Pitt.
Yes, thank you, Melissa.
Yes, hi. I'd have to look that up to see. Is everybody hearing me okay?
Yes.
I'd have to look that up to see where we were on the original submittal, which I'm trying to do right now. But one thing that Paul did bring up is if we go with the 8-line method, because there's a lot of dead space between the P and the S in pavilions. If we're able to use the 8-line method, then we're under the 200 square feet. We're under the 200 square feet for the entire project. I don't know whether you were contemplating allowing that or not. A lot of cities allow that because of the fact that the pavilions has such a big P and an S, and then everything else is about 2/3 of that. So that's why we came up with that. Let me just see. We had let's see, the revision 9 that I have. That's not it. It would be revision 8 probably. Let's just see. Revision 8, the pavilions itself was 256 square feet. And the side elevation was 30. And the pharmacy was 22.1 square feet. So it was a lot larger. I'll go back and add these things up, and we have 30 plus 256.5. We were at 308.6 square feet for the building signage. Well, hang on. I'm not right there. It's even more than that. We had the drive up and go, which was 29.31. And then we also had the Starbucks that was 19.63. So we were about just a little shy of 358 square feet.
Tim, I think the question was the sign reduction for the pavilion itself, not including the secondary signage. Because it look here on the site plan, it looks like the original one, figure 2, the pavilion was 35 feet long and 7 feet 4 inches tall. And then in figure 3,
That's correct.
it got reduced to 28 feet long and 6 feet tall. So I guess
Right.
Now. Okay, go ahead.
The original was 256.5 for the 7'4" P by 35 feet.
And then what's the size for figure B? Just a pavilion.
The B is 30 square feet. That's a 2'6" by 12.
We're talking about the pavilion sign only.
That's what I'm talking about. The side set is 2'6" by 12, which is 30 square feet. The front set originally was 256.5 square feet at 7'4" in height.
Okay, and then what's the side on figure B? Let me do the math here. For the front elevation for pavilion.
I just told you it was 30 square feet
The report says it's 169.5 for the
on the
pavilion.
side elevation.
No,
It's-
Tim, the revision to the pavilions on the.
Oh, I see.
main
I
building
see
frontage.
I see what you're talking about. Yeah, hang on a second. Let me pull that up. On the one that we've submitted tonight, hang on, I'll be right there.
If I'm doing my math right, it should be 168 for figure 3 pavilion sign only, not including the secondary signage.
It's we've got it called out at 169.5 for the front elevation, and for the side it's still 30 square feet. So if we go with the 8-line method, it reduces it down, which brings you into conformance with the ordinance.
Madam Chair, our code is very clear that we use the 4-line method. I mean, they said we could do 8-line method if it was 2-line of signage. So we could do 4-line for the top sign, 4-line for the bottom. That's a total of 8.
So it sounds like that's not an option then?
No, because this is only 1 line of signage, so we just do 4-line method.
Got it. I mean,
And it seems like,
sorry, go on, Melissa.
sorry, it seems like to reduce it to comply, that sign would be significantly smaller. To reduce it, the required square footage. Because we've already reduced it, let's see, it's already been reduced.
What was the
87 square feet.
Yeah.
It was reduced 87 square feet. So to reduce another 47.
So if that's the case, I would recommend that the board continue this item so that staff can discuss with the city attorney about the use interpretation, but we handle every project the same because ACE had secondary signage that we include combined, and it was 200. So we could go back and talk to our city attorney to see if there's any other method of interpretation that can make this work. Otherwise, I think the other option then would be a variance to go larger than our sign regulation, and that would require approval from the planning commission.
I see Paul, you're on the line. I don't know if Paul or Cedric, if you want to weigh in. Do you want to move this forward and get a chair review and do a reduction in the sign? Is that something or would you prefer to continue this item and discuss it with the city attorney to see if there's other ways to interpret the code or possibly get a variance, as Kanika had mentioned?
I would prefer to not reduce it any further, Ms. Hill. I'd prefer to, continue the conversation with either city attorney or, planning commission.
Okay.
Regarding the interpretation. I think just how the building's balanced, to reduce it further, it would just look kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, I tend to agree too. I think that that's a challenge. There's the code and what's the intent of the code, and then there's practicality and application, which the two seem to be at odds with one another right now.
Yeah.
And functionality is, in my mind, something, a sign, you need to be able to read it and see it. So I think that makes sense. So would any of the board members like to make a motion to continue the project?
I'll make a motion, and I'd also like to, I don't know if it would be unreasonable to request a rendering of the conforming sign size so we could see, everybody could see how small it would actually be.
I think that's a great recommendation. I don't know if that's something, Paul, if you and your team are comfortable, showing what that reduction would look like.
Yeah, I would. I think that would help the conversation. I agree with the earlier comment. I think this current design is better than the first one. It's not as large. I think it feels right on the building, as the other board member commented. We don't want the city to look like Las Vegas, certainly. But again, I think with providing that rendering, I think it'll help provide some perspective of what direction it would be going to conform how the code is being interpreted.
Okay, great. Thank you. So board member Carlson made a motion to continue the project and requested a rendering to show what the reduction of 47.7 square feet would look like. Do I have a second for that motion?
I'll second the motion.
Great, thank you. Board member Younger, second the motion. So 1 second. So the motion was made by board member Carlson, a second by board member Younger. We will now take a roll call. Vice Chair Sai.
Yes.
Okay, board member Younger,
Yes.
board member Carlson,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Great. So the project will continue by a vote of 4-0. And so we'll address this further with the city. Sorry, I thought I heard something there. This decision is final unless an appeal is filed within 15 days from today. No construction or activity may commence during this period. Appeal forms may be obtained by the city clerk's office. Okay, great. So thank you, Paul, Cedric, and Tim. I appreciate your input. I now ask that board members Smeaton rejoin us.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, there he is. Excellent. Okay, so now moving on to item number 2, which is a remodel and signage for Krispy Kreme located at 710 Fair Oaks Avenue. Staff report, please.
Madam Chair, this project is being processed by Veronica.
Hi.
Oh, she's on here and she'll go ahead and share the staff presentation with the board.
Great.
Hi there. Good evening. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Veronica, we could see your screen, but the presentation is not playing.
Sorry about that. Let me see. You can see my screen. Okay, let me try again. Okay, can you see my my items in my folder here?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna open the Krispy Kreme presentation one more time.
Do you have multiple screens?
I have a couple of things that I opened up just to be ready.
Veronica, I can play on my end. I'll go ahead and do that.
Thank you so much, Melinda.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Design Review Board. The project before you is 710 Fair Oaks Avenue, project number 2326, design review and approval of a sign permit. The project description is as follows. Design review for an exterior remodel of a 1,672 square foot commercial building. New construction or modification of the building size is not proposed, as well as a sign permit to allow installation of 2 wall signs. The zoning for the site is commercial general, and as proposed, the project is exempt from CEQA per section 15301. This slide shows an aerial view of the subject property located at 710 Fair Oaks Avenue and is part of the Upper Fair Oaks Corridor. It is surrounded by commercial land uses to the north and south and the west, but residential land uses to the east. This slide shows a street view of the subject building that is proposed to be remodeled. This slide shows a close-up view of the site plan where the building is located. And it shows that there is parking here up against the neighboring building, some parking immediately behind the subject building. Also, there is parking up against the easterly property line that is not shown on this slide. There are a total of 27 parking spaces, and this parking lot is shared with 712 and 714 Fair Oaks. The applicant is proposing to restripe the accessible van parking space and provide a striped walkway. This sidewalk here is new and it will connect to the city sidewalk and it will lead to the side entrance, which actually will be the main entrance. Bicycle parking is proposed in the rear, and a condition of approval has been imposed requesting that the applicant provide bicycle parking towards the front also for patrons. This slide shows the existing and proposed west elevation, which is the front side of the building. Overall, the applicant is proposing to remove the mansard roof in its entirety, the brick feature in the corners and along the side walls, replace all the windows, remove this walkway that functions as a ramp, fill in the patio, install new railing, replace the front door, relocate the entrance to the side. Some new features will be brick veneer in white, planters along the front, flat green metal canopies with can lights underneath, the channel letter sign, which will be the prominent sign, a metal roof cap throughout the building that is about 6 inches wide and protrudes about 2 inches, and new paint throughout. This slide shows the existing and proposed south elevation. As I mentioned before, the applicant is proposing to remove these brick pillared features throughout and relocate the existing front door to this side of the building. A new sidewalk will extend the full length of the building and connect with the city sidewalk here. The green canopies will be placed above a window and the front doorway. A wall sign will also be here, and this sign will not be internally illuminated. It will be lit by the gooseneck lamps right above it. Some wall packs are here for additional lighting. The brick veneer that is being used in the front will extend about halfway the length of this wall. And the band that is at the bottom is stucco and will be painted in dark gray. These walls will be in light gray. And the roof cap will extend us also on this elevation and will be in dark gray. This is an angled view showing the front and the south elevation. This slide shows the existing and proposed rear elevation. As the board can see, the roof cap will continue. This opening here will not be there. Access to the roof will be provided from inside the building. The existing door will be replaced with a new metal door, and the canopy will be placed above it. Some wall lights here and here. The stucco wall will also be replaced, as I mentioned before. And these existing bollards will be repainted. Bicycle parking will be provided here, which is in this corner. This slide shows the existing and proposed north side elevation. And as you can see, the roof cap will continue on this side and the band as well. Some planters here and here, a downspout here, wall lighting fixtures as well. These here is part of the design element for this side of the building. Rolling donuts, about 4 feet tall. These are not going to be animated or internally lit. They're flat metal pieces that will be mounted to the wall, and they will be lit by the gooseneck lamps above them. The white brick veneer that is being used on the front will be continued here with the green canopy above the window. A condition of approval has been imposed requiring the applicant to design and provide additional bicycle parking space in this corner here. This driveway functions as a one-way driveway for people who are exiting the property, and it will be about here in this corner. This is another view showing the front and the north side elevation. Part of the request before the board tonight is the approval of 2 wall signs. The prominent in front sign is the channel letter sign on the top, which will be about 23.4 square feet in size. The sign is just over 8 feet in length and just under 3 feet in height, and is in the traditional Krispy Kreme colors of green, white, and red. The other sign, which faces the angled parking on the south building elevation, is aluminum decals that will be mounted onto the wall in red and green. It will be indirectly illuminated by the gooseneck lamps that are above it. It is about 8.5 feet in length and almost 4 feet in height for a total size of 32.9 square feet. The applicant is providing the board with an option in regards to the patio enclosure in the front. The first option is to have the patio area fully enclosed. This allows the business to maximize the use of their small patio area. The second option is to have the enclosure with the gate on the north side so that patrons can exit this way should they choose to. In tonight's motion, the board should include which option they choose to see. Some project-specific conditions that have been imposed for this project are: the applicant shall provide the public art in compliance with the South Pasadena Municipal Code Section 36.395 if the project meets the minimum valuation to be subjected to the public art requirement prior to issuance of an occupancy permit. If the project is subject to the public art requirement, the applicant shall pay the appropriate fee. The building parapet wall shall be increased by at least 6 inches, but not more than 12 inches, to fully screen the new roof equipment from view from the public right-of-way. Construction plans submitted for plan check must show the driveway with a stenciled arrow to direct traffic. An exit-only sign of 18 inches wide by 24 inches long facing the street must be placed on the building or other conspicuous location, alerting drivers that the north side driveway is not a vehicle entrance. Construction plans submitted for plan check must show at least 3 bicycle parking spaces on the north side driveway near the front patio area. This area must be designed to alert drivers exiting the site of their location and protect the bicycle fixture and bicycles by using bollards and/or a raised curb on which the bicycles will be parked. The options for the Design Review Board tonight are to approve the project as proposed without changes, or approve with modifications to the conditions and/or design, or continue the project to a future public hearing and direct the applicant to make changes to the project, or to deny the project. Staff's recommendation tonight is for the Design Review Board to approve the project as proposed and issue design review approval and a sign permit, subject to the conditions of approval for property located at 710 Fair Oaks Avenue. This concludes staff's presentation. I am available for questions, and the applicant is here as well to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Veronica, for that presentation. So now we'll move into questions for the staff. I'll call on each board member. Or Vice Chair Sai, do you have any questions for the staff?
I do. So, are they allowed to put signage on the awning in the front?
On the awning, they're not proposing to place the signs on the actual awning, but on the wall that is above the awning on the front side of the building.
Yeah. So my question was because the sign right now I feel like is a little too high, it's a little unbalanced, but I've seen on other Krispy Kreme buildings where they have that a little above the awning, but they have like the words donuts and coffee sitting on top of the awning. And so that's my question, if they're not allowed to, is that something they took away, and that's why it's missing?
If I recall correctly, and I don't know the sign ordinance by heart, Melinda and Kanika, please correct me if I'm wrong, but the sign ordinance does allow to have some signs on awnings, except that in this specific awning, it's a flat metal awning. And so the only way to have sign would be on that short fascia that faces the street. They would have to replace the awning with a different kind of awning.
Okay.
Madam Chair, if I could add to that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hearing board members, I was suggesting to split that signage into two, Krispy Kreme and maybe put the donut on top. We do allow canopy sign. If you recall, there's that corner on the corner of Fair Oaks and Mission. The Starbucks sign, if you drive by there, we do allow projecting sign above the canopy.
Above it, okay. Because I've seen it in a lot of other Krispy Kremes, and it looks like there's something missing. So I wasn't sure if that was proposed and it was eliminated or something. So that's just my question. If that was something in the code.
That's a good question. And actually, no, this is the original design that was submitted for the awning.
Okay, that's my only question.
Great, thank you. Board Member Younger.
I have no questions.
Okay, great, thank you. Board Member Smeaton.
Yeah, a couple of questions for staff, and it also may spill over into the applicant for an answer. Staff is requesting, I guess, a relocation of the bicycle racks to the northwest corner, right? Is that correct?
No, actually, it's to provide additional bicycle parking. Yes, so that it's closer to patrons who come and park their bicycle and want to have their donut and coffee in the patio.
Right. So there would be I guess they would still maybe keep two on the back and an additional couple in the front, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then they show the applicant has option 1 and option 2. And again, it's probably a question for the applicant. So they've got to position those bike racks. I kind of like the idea myself of not having that, of being able to get out of that patio up there with steps or something, instead of it being, you've got to walk back into the building to go out, but then you've got to be able to put bikes, steps, and still not lose all your seating out there. So it's something that I think the applicant can address also, but that's something I think we have to think about, of how we go. And yeah, there it is right there.
Yes, there is sufficient space right next to that area. So the first option on the left-hand side that shows the gate, there is additional space right next to the striped area where bicycle parking can be accommodated.
Okay, yeah, be on that side of the left side of the baller, right? Okay, good. Okay, that's not good to know. Thank you. I think for staff, that's all the questions I have for staff. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Board Member Smeaton. And Board Member Carlson, do you have any questions for the staff?
Yes, just briefly, again, with respect to that patio, visually, are they both kind of the same? It's just the one has an opening gate and one is a enclosed gate? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
that's just curious. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Board Member Carlson. I also have a couple questions for the staff, and like Board Member Smee, and they may spill into the applicant questions as well. So I guess the first question I have was regarding, this is just a one-way, there's no drive-through, and it's just a one-way street that goes around the building. So similar to how Mama's was functioning prior.
Yes, yes.
Okay. And so were there discussions of that pedestrian access and vehicular access? I have a little bit of a concern, and this is something that I can address with the applicant too, about where they've located the ADA parking stall. And they're literally having the the striping, the cross access point, the aisle, right where people come in off of Fair Oaks.
Yes, actually, that parking space is already there. They are not modifying any of the parking area. They're just restriping that parking, van accessible parking space, but it's already there.
Understood, but as the new tenant in the space, they really should be concerned. There's a concern for safety here, especially, I know similar businesses, for instance, we'll take McDonald's, which is a similar setup, where you're coming in off of Fair Oaks, you can make a left-hand turn, you can turn right to get in, and you've got cars coming right off, people accessing, you've got cross pedestrian access there. And then, so I'm just concerned with putting an access path that runs across there. I understand it may be existing, but it doesn't mean it's the correct or proper design. So that's one thing I think should be addressed. And similarly for option, I'm not sure if they were labeled option 1 or option 2 for the patio area. Yeah, here we go. So the first option, the detail 3, to the left-hand side, I think that that's more functional. People can come in and leave from there, which is great. I also have concerns though, if it's not, as Board Member Carlson asked, is it a different design or is it just literally a gate? And it's just a gate, so you walk right off and then there's traffic. So I just have a safety concern. I'm assuming Krispy Kreme is going to be popular, so you're going to have a lot of traffic going in and out here. So I think it's something to consider for both of those options. And so I guess my question is more, was this addressed or discussed with the applicant?
This particular item was not discussed about the safety factor as cars are exiting that side of the driveway.
Okay.
Madam Chair, if I may add though, if the board prefer the option where you can exit the patio to the striping area, there's other features that could be installed to create a more pedestrian exit. Like we could require you to put a landscape planter, raised landscape planter there or something to break up the pedestrian access from the drive access. They do have the width of, I believe, existing of 22 feet. Is that right, Veronica?
That's about right. It's on that slide. Yes, Melinda, thank you.
The board is comfortable in that design, that could be added as a conditions of approval where the chair can work with the applicant on defining that pedestrian safety.
Okay. Yeah, for me, that would be something that I would want to at least consider, just knowing how other businesses on Fair Oaks that have a lot of traffic in and out, similar designs, and how there's often concerns for pedestrian crossing vehicular traffic. So it's, just something to consider. I think the other question that I have for staff, so it was about the safety and the front there. And then it seemed like there were discs that were in the shape of donuts on the side of the building. Is that part of the public art component, or is the public art something that's decided after the applicant submits for building permit? I'm just trying to understand what's designated as the public art component and what isn't.
Madam Chair, this project has not presented to the Public Art Commission, so that cannot be used as the public art component. If the project is subject to the public art, you have the option to pay the fee or go to the public art component And they may propose that as their public art, but at this point, it's not considered public art.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks for the clarification. Okay. And then my only other question was the extension of the parapet at the top to hide the mechanical equipment. I'm relatively comfortable with the height design, but I'm just trying to understand where like view studies done. I saw in the package, it appeared that they had a 6-foot person is what was shown.
There, the way that it was presented on the elevations, the top of the roof equipment is right in line with the height of the parapet. And so there is some concern as drivers are passing by in front of the building that the roof equipment will be seen.
Okay. But they were complying with the code, but now the extension is not. I'm just trying to understand. So the extension is not.
So the extension actually is, it's not that they're out of compliance on the height of the parapet. They're not fully in compliance with screening of the roof equipment because there's a possibility that it can be seen.
Got it. Okay.
So that's why staff is asking that it be raised at least 6 inches.
Okay, understood. All right, thank you. Those were all of my questions. So now we will open the public hearing portion. Staff, were there any public comments for this item?
No, there were no public comments.
Okay, great. Do we have a presentation from the applicant?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
And I will attempt to share. And it's actually right behind this. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Here we go.
Veronica, we can't hear the audio.
Oh, let me take off my earbuds. Maybe that's what's doing it. Sorry.
Good evening. We present to you this evening for your review and consideration the major remodel of the existing building at 17 Fairhurst Avenue into a new Krispy Kreme donuts restaurant. Staff has density and demographic profile, as well as its awareness of other existing great opportunity for success. Choose the location at 17 Fairhurst Avenue, where it's truly and truly
It's really difficult to understand the presentation. I don't know if any of the other board members are having issues. I can't even hear it at this point, but it was muffled.
I can't hear it. I can't hear it either.
Melinda, can you please share? Do you have access to the presentation? I'm not sure what the issue is on my end.
Good evening. We present to you this evening for your review and consideration the major remodel of the existing building at 710 Fair Oaks Avenue into a new Krispy Kreme Donuts Fresh Shop. South Pasadena's population density and demographic profile, as well as its remoteness from other existing Krispy Kreme locations, presents a great opportunity for success. We've chosen the location at 710 Fair Oaks Avenue for its charming and attractive freestanding building profile within the well-established retail corridor. The Fresh Shop program is about bringing fresh Krispy Kreme's highest quality donuts, signature beverages, and hospitality to fans in South Pasadena. It is a smaller, more accessible, neighborhood-style format than our larger factory stores. Krispy Kreme's intention is to bring new life to this old building and provide visual value to the overall community. While working within the restrictions of the existing building and site parameters, we present to you the proposed design within the objections of the City of South Pasadena's design guideline to achieve the cohesive small town feel desired by the community. To maintain the pedestrian shopping street feel, large storefront windows and exterior patio dining remain, welcoming pedestrians to stop in and visit. Pavement markings and new curb guide pedestrian traffic to a new accessible side entrance door. Planters were added at the front of the patio to soften the transition between the building and the public sidewalk. Parking lot is existing to remain. Existing parking lot is owned by and shared with the building to the right of the property, which is home to multiple businesses. Krispy Kreme will provide new accessible parking and accessible path of travel to the entrance door of Krispy Kreme. Modifications to the existing site are limited to one-way traffic flow around the building. The wide drive aisle will allow for circular traffic during scheduled daily deliveries from box trucks. Bicycle parking has also been included. Due to existing conditions, options to add landscaping was limited. Proposed compromise is addition of multiple raised planter boxes around the perimeter of the building. The planters are moved to the edge of the sidewalk on the right side of the building to provide a buffer between the parking lot and the building. A new parapet style roof system will replace the existing mansard roof. The taller parapets create more of a main street presence to the building, as well as providing screening for all rooftop equipment. Roof access has also been moved to the interior of the building to provide a four-sided cohesive building design. Existing front entrance door was not accessible. Therefore, a new accessible entrance door has been added to the side of the building. The building entrance is identified with striped accessible path from the parking as well as the street's public way. Concrete curbs are provided for ramp runoff protection. The building's centered front door remains for aesthetics as well as for access to the patio seating. The front patio does not have access directly to the street due to safety concerns. The right side of the patio would step down into a ramp, while the left side would step into oncoming traffic. New Krispy Kreme hanger rod canopies are proposed at all windows and entrances of the building, projecting 3 feet. The canopies are proposed to be illuminated. This will provide lighting for our patrons enjoying the patio seating. As there is no additional sight lighting proposed with this remodel, these canopy lights will also serve as safety lighting for the perimeter of the building. All doors and windows will be new, maintaining high interior visibility from the street into the store. The new storefront windows and doors of the front of the building will be recessed slightly to create desired effect in shadowing. New exterior building finishes and colors have been selected to signify the Krispy Kreme brand to patrons while also creating visual interest and depth to the building. All signage is compliant with design regulations for brand recognition, with color palette complementary to the building exterior. We thank you for your time and consideration as you review the proposed remodel at 710 Fair Oaks Avenue and look forward to proceeding with plans to operate within the City of South Pasadena.
Great, thank you, Veronica. Do we have the applicants online to give them an opportunity to discuss or rebuttal the project?
I believe they are Tammy, Roger, and Jacob.
Great.
Which one is applicant representative, Veronica, so I could bring them on?
Tammy, Roger, and Jacob. They called in.
I don't know who this is. I'll allow this one to talk.
Hello.
Hi, who is this? Can you hear us? You have to unmute. Trying another one now. Could one of you unmute yourself? It looks like you're unmute now. Can you introduce yourself because you're just calling in?
that Tammy or was it Tammy or Roger?
Yes, this is Tammy with National Restaurant Designers.
Hi, Tammy. So we just saw your presentation. Thank you. Do you have anything to add?
No, I mean, just in general, hearing what you guys are saying about the project, I would just remind you kind of as you look at the site plan, the ADA parking stalls are technically on the adjacent property because the property line goes right through that center drive aisle. So we were proposing to, make sure that the existing ADA space becomes accessible, but technically that's part of that shared parking, so it's technically not on our property.
Okay, thank you. Do you have anything else that you'd like to add?
I would just also add, that front patio. I know with Veronica and some of the members of the planning board, we've kind of talked about this over the last couple months, and we want to try to maximize the seating. As you guys know, as exciting as it is to get a Krispy Kreme, the more seating and opportunity you can provide for the patrons, the better. And we understand wanting to get public access on and off of that patio from outside, but we lose 4 tables in doing so, which is, and, all the safety concerns we've kind of talked about is why we have, our preferred option would be to have everybody kind of come through the building to access that patio.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks. We will now move into the question portion. So board members, I'll call on each of you to ask questions to the applicant. Vice Chair Tsai.
My question is first about the planters in the front. Are they removable?
Yes.
Okay. Have you considered putting one more in the middle? It's kind of feel like there's 2 and then there's like a big gap in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, definitely that would be possible for on the front side.
Okay. I mean, we could discuss it amongst the other commissioners, but I just feel like that I kind of wanted to see one more planter there. And then my other question is the sign itself feels very high. It doesn't feel like balanced on the elevation. And I know it's because of the support for the awning. So is it possible to do 2 supports instead of the 3 so that you could lower the signage a little bit to kind of make it feel balanced? I don't know if you studied that yet.
Yeah, it's not something we looked at, we typically try to get our signage as high as we can just for, more visibility. But I guess for, proportions on that elevation, I can see what your concern is there too. So that's definitely something we could look into if we need to.
I've also looked at other Krispy Kreme. I've seen other Krispy Kremes where they have the channel letters that says just donuts and coffee that sit on top of the awning. So I don't know if that's something maybe like you could look into, because I feel like with that on top of the awning and the signage so high, if you want to keep it that high, I feel like that would balance out the elevation. I don't know. I've just seen that in other Krispy Kreme buildings. So I don't.
You're right.
Yeah.
It's an older design that they used to do. They don't really do that anymore.
Got it.
It's something we could look at if you guys need us to, but they've kind of gone away from that design. But I do understand what you're saying because it kind of brings that eye level down to where the canopy would be and kind of breaks it up a little bit. My other concern would be is that signage when they do them on the canopies is not illuminated. So, and based on the total number of square footage, we would have to reduce down that main sign to be able to add the other signage. So
Got it. Okay.
I'm not sure if we would want to go that route or not.
Got it. Okay. My concern is just that there's too much white space underneath the sign right now. So that's my only concern. So
Okay.
that's it. So those are my only questions.
Great, thank you, Vice Chair Sai. Board Member Smee, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Hi, Tammy. Yeah, thank you very much for your presentation, and I think I can speak for all of us. We're looking forward to Krispy Kreme coming in town, so I think that's great. And I think the building, you know, it's obviously it's your corporate look, and it's so much nicer to see than what ugly thing we have there right now that we have to look at as we drive by every day. So thank goodness this is happening. First question I have is the brick veneer, is it painted brick or is it an integral color white brick? Just curious.
Yeah, what we've been doing is a painted brick.
Okay. No big deal. It doesn't really matter either way. I was just kind of curious on that. Also, I totally agree with Melissa on the planters. I would like to see, I mean, I guess they're prefabbed or whatever, but I would say planters all the way across the front instead of, I mean, it's odd now with just two. It doesn't seem, three balances it off better, but I mean, I don't know if you could just stack them up and do a continuous planter along the front. It would certainly feel like a nice soft barrier between the raised patio and the sidewalk. That's one comment. And do you know are those planters irrigated or will you have somebody water those periodically by hand?
We would have them water them periodically. You know, we try to get a plant that's, you know, doesn't have to be watered, you know, as often for sure.
Okay.
But probably be watered because right now there's no irrigation or landscaping on this site at all.
Okay. Next question is, and I kind of take back what I said earlier about, you know, maybe introducing with one of your options, the steps and everything on that north side of that patio. It is all about seating in restaurants. It's all about how many you can seat. That's where your money's at. That's where it's all about. And also I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but when you open up that, if you opened up that patio for an egress on that north side, you also kind of have a security breach too. Somebody can come in there, grab something and run, where it's not as likely to happen if, you know, they got to climb over that thing to get into somebody, you know, if somebody left a purse there or whatever. So there is a security thing there too. And I guess if we end up parking or additional bike racks there, a person riding a bike unfortunately does have to walk around the front sidewalk and then down the side of the building to get in. They can't just slip in the front patio and go in the door. So I understand where you're coming from, and Samantha will have something to say too. And I agree, there's a safety factors we have to be very careful of here. And it's unfortunate to hear that existing handicap parking space is where it's at, because I agree it'd be better if that was slid down further toward the middle of that aisle. So, because when people turn in there, they race in there. And then all of a sudden you got some poor person in a wheelchair coming across there. It's not a good vibe, but I don't know if that's something the city can impose with that, you know, that ownership of that, to have it restriped, we move it down, or if that's something that we can do as a condition of approval. I guess we can discuss that, but that's all my questions, Chair Hill, and thank you very much, Tammy, for your presentation.
You're welcome.
Great, thank you, Board Member Smeaton. Board Member Carlson, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I don't, thanks.
Great, thank you. Board Member Younger, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I do not.
Okay, great, thank you. I do have just a couple quick questions. Obviously, as I mentioned, my concern is kind of safety and how the vehicular and pedestrian networks interface. But this gets into specifically with the design. So I noticed on the awnings, which by the way, I really like, I think the design is great. I think that the way that it's been done, it's a huge improvement. To Mark's point, the eyesore that's there now, this is wonderful that we're going to be getting this in. I think we're all pretty excited about it. The awnings on the front, you have one large one with the facade, and then on either side you have two smaller ones. The one on the side to the south makes sense to me because you've got you have a pedestrian aisle there, correct? Yeah, so you've got the few awnings. You got one over the door and then one over that window. The one to the north, I understand kind of you're trying to balance it out, but it's not really, is it just to cover the window and that's it? And it's because nobody's walking through there, right? That's supposed to be just vehicular in that location.
Correct. It is. It's more for, the look of the building, try to break up that facade a little bit and to cover that window.
Okay. No, I do like the balance of this here. I was just trying to make sure I understood kind of the use of it. I agree with the other board members about the planters, making continuous in front. And this way it does create that barrier between the pedestrian and the use of the patio area. I am concerned to both board member Smeaton's point about access off of there. It is very much about seating. We understand you're taking way more seating if you have an access point directly from the patio to the parking area and the right of way. Also security. I know that we have, there's quite a few, the homeless situation that we have in the city is something that we're addressing. So that's something to consider too from a security standpoint as well. With that patio, I don't know if that's something that you guys have been considering, but if you are gonna put it in, if you're really considering putting in that access, I do think it needs to be separated from the vehicular, whether it's a planter or bollard something, because that's a major concern. And obviously that impacts the design. So there would be a slight design change in that case if you're going to have access there. But then the other thing, going back to, as Mark had mentioned, the ADA access, the aisle there and the existing striping, I understand that's an existing parking lot, and whatever your lease is with your landlord, that would need to be discussed, but both the tenant and the landlord is responsible for the ADA spaces. It's never recommended that you have an ADA access aisle that crosses traffic. So while that may have been how they've done it for years, that's not ideal. Especially because of where it's located right off Fair Oaks. So anybody coming in, whether they're making a left-hand turn or a right-hand turn, it's going to be a bit of a dangerous situation. So I recommend addressing that. I understand it may be a little bit outside the design review board's purview, but I do think it's something to consider. And then my other question is about the donuts on the side of the building. I know the way they were described, they look like these might be kind of painted on or something, but then the way that was described in the description was metal discs. So I'm just kind of trying to understand those a little bit better.
Yeah, so Krispy Kreme has done them both ways, actually. They've done them kind of like a vinyl type sticker or painted on, and then they've done them where they are a raised aluminum disc that is, stood off from the building, and they're starting to do that on their newer designs, and more on their factory stores that have drive-through windows. It gives the kids and people something to see while they're in that drive-through lane. On this building, I feel like it kind of breaks up that long wall. And very early on in the project, it was talked about that possibly it could be used as public art. But then in the last round of comments we got, your team said it was not going to be considered public art, but it would not be considered part of the signage. So I hope maybe that helps answer your question a little bit.
That does, thank you. I appreciate that. And then my other question, I think there was a condition of approval or a condition in here about removing the one light underneath the gooseneck lamp. Is that correct? Under where we're looking now on this facade? Yes, that one.
So, which elevation are you looking at? Because I tried to get on the Zoom and I got kicked out of that part, so I'm only on the phone.
Okay, sorry.
It's
It
okay.
is on the north, I believe that's the north elevation. Is that correct?
So
Staff?
we removed one. Let me see, I'm opening mine here too. We removed one on the north side where it has original glazed signage. That did have 3 goosenecks above it and we reduced it to 2.
Okay. So then maybe I missed that condition.
No, Madam Chair, you are correct. Tammy, we are referring to, there's a wall pack that is right underneath one of the gooseneck lamps. And that's one of the conditions, to have that light, that round wall pack removed so that you don't have a lamp over another wall fixture right underneath it.
Okay, would it be possible instead of removing it to move it down on that building a little bit? Only because this lot, I don't know if you guys recognized or not, has no site lighting on the lot itself. So the goosenecks are gonna be more to shine only on the building. So those 3 goosenecks would shine just on those 3 round donuts, but the wall packs would at least provide some lighting around the building, you know, so if somebody is walking on this side of the building, it's still kind of lit, if that makes sense.
That makes sense to me. That was why I brought it up, because I just wanted to clarify what the condition was. And that's what I thought, is it was being asked to remove them. But my understanding is that there's 2 different uses for the light. The gooseneck is more of like an accent and a feature, and the other one's a safety. And so I'd be concerned with just removing it completely. I understand maybe there's a concern in terms of the design, but I think that I wouldn't recommend removing it. So that's why I brought up the question. But those were all
Thank you for bringing it up.
Yes, those are all the questions that we have for the applicant at this point. So I will now close the public hearing portion and we can have a discussion amongst ourselves. So I ask that each of the board members please just turn off their microphone, or turn off their mute, or turn on your microphone, and we can discuss it amongst ourselves. Let's start with board member Smeaton, if you want to kick off the discussion.
Okay. I think we're first of all in agreement that I think we could certainly make a condition to extend those planters along the front patio, and I don't think the applicant will have a problem with that. And I think it'll just look consistent to have something that goes all the way across there. And so that's one thing that I think we could certainly agree upon. I'm kind of torn on that egress or no egress out of that front patio. I see both sides of that. I'm tending to lean more towards leave it like they have it, where there is no access out of that. It's secured. It's, you know, we don't have problems with pedestrians coming out there, because I just probably think it's better to, and then they get their tables and chair count up there too. But that's just me. That's one thing. Then the third thing that I wanted that Melissa brought up about, you know, void and solid on the white space, basically on that front facade. I see that too. I'm wondering if we, let's say we lose that front support, the center support, and we have the 2 on the side, but we bring them in a little bit more. So, you know, you have a cantilever, you have a back span, you're able to structurally support it. You bring those 2 in from the side a little bit more, just drop that sign down, not that much, you know, I don't know, whatever, 6, 8 inches, makes it feel a little more balanced, still see it from the street, and everybody's happy. Melissa, would that sound like a possibility?
Yeah, I agree. It just needs to be like a tad, I feel like it just needs a little bit of white on top. I don't know if
It's
the
crowding that
parapet cap.
fascia out there. Yeah, it's crowding that
Yeah.
coping a little bit.
Yeah, I think it would look different if the cap was white, then I feel like there would be more white space around the sign, but because it's black, I feel like it needs to get away from that slightly. Just, I don't need it to be centered, just a little bit.
Right. Yeah, I don't want to change change the design or too much, but I don't think that's that big of a deal if we drop that center support and move the two on the ends in a little bit more. It's probably, engineer has to look at that and see if that's a go or not, but I mean, it's a suggestion, and then it could be a chair review to see if it works. If it doesn't, if they say, it really is creating problems for us, then we could pass on that and the chair could make that decision.
I agree with both board member Sai and board member Smeaton that it is it does feel like it's way too close to the top. And if it were white, if the cap were or a lighter color, not even white, but just a lighter color, I feel like it wouldn't be, it just looks like it's right at the top edge. So the other option too is if structurally it doesn't work, you could do 4 supports. And so 2 at the end, 2 at the end, and then center it in the middle and bring it down. So I think there's multiple solutions in terms of making sure you still get the structural support needed, but being able to drop the sign down some. So, so Melissa and Mark, do you guys have an idea of what you think would make sense to drop it down? Like, are we talking about a foot, 8 inches? Like, what's the?
Can we put that elevation up, Veronica or Melinda? The rendering.
How is if the applicant is still, Tammy, if you're still on, what's the depth or the width of the cap? Is it a foot, 18 inches?
I think the cap itself is 12 inches.
12 inches, okay. It's like another.
So like 6 inches down would probably do it, but that's if we 6 inches, let's say 6 inches down would probably hit that without moving that center support, it would hit that rosette or whatever of that. So we have, like you say, we have to do something with that center one to give us the flexibility of that sign coming down a little bit. And you're right, Sam, it can either go, we could do 4 and reposition them, and that's kind of slips in between, or structural engineer can figure that out. But yeah, I think it's doable, and it's not the end of the world. I think it could be manipulated.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I would like to remind the board that there is a condition to ask them to increase that parapet 6 inches. So would that fix the concern about getting some white space about 6 inches above the sign? Are you looking for 6 inches in addition to the additional 6 inches?
So the condition is 6 inches additional building frontage, like the parapet goes up additional 6 feet in height?
That is, Veronica, can you confirm that's what we're recommending? That the parapet would be
Yes.
in height for all sides of the building?
Yes, that all around the height of the parapet would be increased by at least 6 inches.
Okay.
So just to clarify, you raise the parapet 6 inches or increase it dimensionally 6 inches?
Increase it dimensionally 6 inches.
Okay, so that wouldn't solve that space problem then. It would just.
Well, it would, because we're framing, that's all being framed out up there, so they can frame up higher and keep that same fascia of 12 inches. It just goes up 6, right?
That was my question. If
Yeah,
it's
I think
12 inches
so.
and raises, or if it becomes 18 inches.
No, it shouldn't be 18. That would look too fat to me. So I think it stays 6, Joe. I mean, stays 12, but the wall itself goes up 6, and then that goes up, stays at the 12. So there, that gives us our clearance right there. I mean, that might
Yes.
give us enough air around it to feel more comfortable.
I agree with that.
And nothing would have to be done per se, really.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we'd have to, I think, whether it goes to a chair review or whether we continue it and take a look at it again, depending on what the board decides. But I think that that would probably solve the issue here, our concern with too much white space below and not enough above. Are there any other concerns or comments or questions?
I had one, just a possible suggestion with respect to that ADA space, the accessible space up front. Is it possible, this isn't really what we're, I guess, supposed to be talking about, but could you take one of those compact spaces in the back and remove it and put an ADA space behind the building with the walkway along the side? They'd lose one compact space behind the building and have an ADA space.
That is exactly what I was thinking. So I am really glad that you made that recommendation or that suggestion. They would lose parking spaces, but that's honestly the best location because you're, someone who is handicapped and needs to park there, you can then put your access aisle and then it goes directly to your sidewalk into the building. So it's actually one of the best locations to locate it. It would mean you'd lose parking stalls and spaces. Unfortunately, there'd be a reduction. So that's
it would just be one space, right? It's not huge.
Well, you need the access aisle too, and van parking stalls are wider than, and you need a minimum of one van parking stall. So unfortunately, you're probably looking at losing most of those spaces in the back. You could probably get one. So if next to the green circle, if you were to have the access aisle just to the left of that, and then you have the parking space there. On the other side, you may still be able to fit two compact spaces. You have to look at your depth with your drive aisle. If not, you could do one that's perpendicular, and then you're just losing two parking spaces in that case. So there's other options to look at. And again, to your point, Joe, we're not really here to address that, but I think it is something that should be considered because it is a major safety error.
There is one other thing, guys, that we would need to consider about that is I think that accessible parking space is also shared with what is it, AT&T, the mobile phone at the corner. So that if we relocated that space, they would have to make sure that the path of travel will go all the way up and across to get into the AT&T building too.
This is where it gets tricky. I thought I heard that there's over 20. So from 1 to 25 spaces, you can park one accessible, but as soon as you're over 25 spaces and you get to 26, you need two. And so it looks like you may also be under. I'm not sure. I didn't count all the parking stalls, but that's something to check as well. And as the tenant, you are still responsible for that, even if the landlord hasn't provided it. So it's something to consider. You may need two spaces anyway. And so there'll be one for AT&T, and then you put one in the back that accesses directly to your building for Krispy Kreme.
There really aren't that many parking spaces there. I don't know that it's going to be an issue, but yeah.
And certainly from a safety standpoint, having one on both sides of the driveway makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. And so then the one thing we haven't given a clear direction on yet, or we haven't discussed, I think, where the board is leaning is, do we want access? Are we comfortable with option A? I'm going to call it option A or option B for the access point off the patio.
If you're going to ride a bike to Krispy Kreme, you're probably not going to have a problem walking around the building.
True. Yeah.
And
right.
after having your Krispy Kreme, you need the extra step.
It's a good point.
Being a counter myself sometimes, yeah. But yeah, I love having the tables out there. I also will be an outdoor sitter, so I appreciate that myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it opens up, Samantha states, it kind of, access is nice, but it opens up another can of worms. We got to really make sure we have to put, either bollards around there or planters or something to keep somebody from just blindly walking off there right into somebody that's, coming down that lane to get out and doesn't see them. So it's almost safer to just leave it enclosed. They get their seating and we don't have an access issue of vehicular and pedestrian there. I think it's more important for us to try to, I don't want to say focus, but try to help locate a different location for that ADA parking space, I think is more important. And we don't really have it's not really easy it's not probably out of our purview, but maybe it's something that we can at least suggest.
Mhm.
Yeah. Also, I like that y'all suggested filling in that center space with more planter because the way it is now looks like you could find a little gate right there to get in the front. Looks like there should be a gate in the center when there's not. So yeah, filling it in was a great call.
Well, that was going to be I know these were the two options that were presented, but if the applicant was leaning towards the idea of having access off the street, that's where I'd recommend putting the gate right between those two planters, but then there's an elevation. I was looking and it looks like there's an elevation issue that you'd have to step up and step down, and then so I just think access, it's just such a small patio. I know there's a similar condition at McDonald's just a few buildings down, but their patio I think is a bit deeper, and so they have more access off there, so it's a little bit of a different condition. But yeah, so exactly, so you'd have to step up there, so that would be an issue or concern as well. I think just having the visual of seeing people outside eating is fine, and you don't need an access point there. You just go into the building and you can only access it from within the building, the patio.
Yeah. However, I do see my sons leaping over the patio.
I had that thought too. I'm like, although people are probably going to try to just jump out, which is dangerous as well. So, but I think if you continue the planters, right, that shows that there's kind of a visual barrier, and there's you have to go in through the building to access it. So
if you're going to jump, you have to be able to clear the planters.
Exactly. Exactly.
Madam Chair,
Mm-hmm.
I add that in the conditions of approval, there is a condition requiring them to add bollards or raised curb to create a division between vehicle traffic and bicycle parking. So it will be there, I believe, is underneath that awning area. Is that correct, Veronica?
Yes, it is in the condition, in the same condition that requests for additional bicycle parking on the front north side of the building, that it be protected either by a raised curb and or bollards to keep the bicycle fixtures safe, but also the people who are using their bicycles safe, and alert the drivers that those things are there.
And keep in mind that is a one-way traffic coming out. So we are doing some sort of pedestrian safety back there. So that is before the patio area. So if you're concerned about safety, that's one thing I just wanted to remind you, that there is going to be some sort of safety protection measure out there as well. And if you're concerned about people jumping over, then I would recommend maybe putting the planter on that side too. So then if they do jump over, then they don't jump over on the traffic side.
So lining with planters around the whole patio.
Right, but I think we need to maybe add that. Is that condition for a chair review, Veronica, for the bicycle and pedestrian feature?
No, it's not. It's just a condition there that when they submit construction drawings, they incorporate that design there.
Okay.
Okay.
So if we're going to be putting bicycle parking there, we do want to continue a safe pedestrian walkway for bicyclists walking along there. So I don't recommend doing a planter there because we're gonna use that space for pedestrian walkway.
Mhm.
Good.
Okay, so yeah, so then it would just be the bollards and you're parking the bikes under that awning that
Mhm.
we're seeing on the screen now. Okay.
So that's just wanted to see, I just want to add that in to see if that would change your discussion on pedestrian safety exiting the patio.
I'm curious, is that Tammy, are you still on the line? I thought I recalled when you were discussing it that your preference is to not have access off the patio onto the right of way. Is that correct?
I believe it is because once we put in that access requirement, then they lose their seating in that patio area.
Okay, that's what I thought she had said that there was.
Maximize their outdoor seating area.
Mhm.
Well, and
That's correct. That's correct. They want to maximize the use of the
Okay.
area.
I think in their presentation, the recorded presentation, they even mentioned an issue with pedestrian traffic and vehicular traffic. And that's why they proposed not having that gate there.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. The other, I don't remember, I didn't really look at the interior layout. I just briefly looked at it. But the other thing is by putting an access point on that gate, that may become the central door that users of the building come in through. And so I don't know if that upsets the flow of how they've laid out the internal function. I'm trying to look for the plans. I don't see it here. I thought there was a plan showing the counter.
Yeah, there is somewhere.
I forget where that was.
That's demo.
I think it's 2-34. So that's,
there it is.
Yeah.
So right now the way it's set up is the main doors off the side are the main entry point where people come in. It looks like, from what I can tell. So I don't know if that's a concern also that by adding a gate there, then you may get more flow from that main off the street frontage. I don't know. I don't think there is the applicant on.
Yeah, I don't think they want that. I think it's just purely for access to the
I think so too.
patio. Yeah,
I would
makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does make sense. I would. So my recommendation is to just not provide access from the pedestrian of the exterior onto the patio, and it's just an enclosed area. Okay, so that being said, are there any other items that we want to discuss from a design standpoint? Or sounds like we're pretty much wrapped up. Okay. Does anyone want to make a motion?
If I may, Madam Chair, interrupt just briefly, can we add one condition? Since there's going to be a few planters and the board would like to see a few more, can we add a condition about landscape maintenance, that these planters have to be maintained throughout the life of the project?
Wait, yeah.
I think that's a great recommendation to add that condition, especially if they're not irrigated. They'll need to be maintained regularly. So yes.
Thank you.
Madam Chair. We could, this is a design review permit, and landscape maintenance is more relating to operation. So they're not applying for a use permit. Let us consult with our city attorney about that, and let's make that, if we're going to add that condition, it would be worked out with the chair of how we can craft it so that we can add it in, because it's a design review, it's not a use permit. If they were coming in for a use permit, then I would have no issue adding that in.
Okay.
Because it's an operation point, we can actually enforce it. Right now, this project is enforced when they receive their occupancy permit.
Got it. Okay. All right. So-
One other condition I would like the board to consider also is that you could discuss, I guess there's a condition about removing the wall pack sign from the north elevation. And my understanding is the board would like that lighting to stay. If that's the case, then we'll have to strike that condition out from.
Yes. Yes, I think that we strike that condition, which I forget what condition it was. If it was P11, was it? I don't remember. Let me see.
Veronica, do you know what condition that is?
P13, is that P13D? Think that's you just have to verify if it's P13D, but I think that that would be the condition that we'd like to omit for safety purposes to keep the light fixture.
That's correct.
And so that will omit. We'd like to add the condition for the planters at the front, and the operation aspect to it and the maintenance is something that will be considered. So that being kind of summarizing it, would one of the board members like to make a motion? Board member Smeaton? Sorry to call you out. Somebody's got to do it.
I was hiding. Well, let me give it a shot, and then Kanika will correct me as she always does and make it right. I make a motion that we ask the applicant to provide a continuous planter along the front patio, number one, of patio elevation. Number two, on this one, if the parapet is going to be raised, because we kind of missed that issue. If that's going to be raised, then I think I don't know how to say it, whether we need to have any adjustment made or not. If everything goes up 6 inches and there's more white space up there, then that maybe isn't an issue at all.
Vice Commissioner, Board Smeaton, I think the board as a whole wanted to see that the sign is balanced out, so I would recommend that we add a condition for a chair review about the facade.
Yeah.
Or signage in relation to the building.
Okay, that's good. That's the way to. So I recommend that that it's a chair review for the final condition of the location of the sign in relationship to the parapet, and that can be when they correct their elevation, we'll be able to see that. Let's see, planters, that. The accessible parking. Is that something that we can even address, Kanika?
I would also add, I think this board as a whole want to see ADA parking in the back of the building. So we can craft a condition that they need to provide ADA parking in compliance with building code requirements. That's something we'll have to consult with our building department to see for ADA compliance. The existing ADA parking space, I would not recommend removing it because that's for the AT&T building. I think we could add a condition for them to evaluate the addition of additional ADA parking behind the building for building code compliance.
Okay, so then we would make that, I think we could make that a chair review too. After it's been vetted through the city, then it comes back in a design of showing that, then that could also be a chair review. Is that correct? Or included in chair? Yeah.
That would be great because I think that will remove some of the parking, modify the layout back there.
Right, okay. I'm trying to make this as simple as possible. So it's basically a chair review and we get Krispy Kreme on board here and it doesn't slow up that process anymore. Is there anything else that we're missing in this motion?
And removal of condition P13.
Oh, and removal of condition 13D.
D, yes.
D is in dog, okay. I think that's it.
Excellent. That was perfect, Mark. Thank you.
Oh, it wasn't perfect.
It was good. It was better than I could have done. That's why I called on you. That was good.
Second it.
Okay, great. So we got a second, Board Member Younger, second that. So a motion was made by Board Member Smeaton and a second by Board Member Younger. So we'll take roll call. Board Member Sy, or Vice Chair Sy, sorry. You're muted again. Okay, well, we'll just, if you do, I don't know if we can do a thumbs up. Well, okay, thumbs up for board members. Board Member Carlson.
Yes, agreed.
Thank you. Board Member Younger.
Agreed.
Board Member Smeaton.
Aye.
Myself, aye, 2 thumbs up. And then Board Member Sy also said aye, said yes. So so that passes by a vote of 5-0. This project is approved subject to those conditions of approval. This decision is final unless an appeal is filed within 15 days from today. No construction or activity may commence during this period, and appeal forms may be obtained from the city clerk's office. Okay, so congratulations, Tammy and team. We're now moving on to the next portion, the consent calendar. So seeing that there is nothing on our agenda for the consent calendar or presentations, we will now move on to discussion items. We have a phase 2 accessory dwelling unit ordinance update. Staff report, please.
Madam Chair, this is a pre-recorded presentation that we're going to play for you. It was pre-recorded and presented at the CHC meeting. Actually, it was at a special CHC meeting. It was a CHC workshop meeting for community outreach for phase 2 of our ADU ordinance update. And phase 2 is really focusing on development of design standard guidelines and procedures to promote accessory dwelling units on historic property and in historic district. So what we're trying to do here is try to promote ADU while also trying to protect our historic character. And I will go ahead and play that presentation for you. And the purpose of that is really to inform this board of what we're doing and also to collect any input the board have for development of the standards and design guidelines.
Great.
So if I can get this screen to share correctly. Oops.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Evan St. Charles, and I'm an architectural historian and preservation planner with Architectural Resources Group. ARG has the pleasure of working with the city in preparing the Accessory Dwelling Units Ordinance Amendment, specifically the updates associated with ADU projects on historic properties. Architectural Resources Group was founded in 1980. We have offices in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Portland. We are a preservation design firm of architects, planners, and conservators. In our planning group, we work on a variety of project types, including historic resources surveys, historic context statements, Mills-Act consultations, historic preservation ordinances, and design guidelines for historic properties. We have extensive experience preparing historic design guidelines, including South Pasadena's residential design guidelines, and more recently, design guidelines for the cities of Redlands and Anaheim. As previously mentioned, the project consists of the development of design standards and procedures, as well as design guidelines for ADUs on historic properties and in South Pasadena's historic districts. South Pasadena's ADUs ordinance was updated in 2019 to comply with State Senate Bill number 13 and Assembly Bill numbers 868 and 881. Despite these updates, the city received interest from homeowners asking for additional refinements to clarify requirements and streamline the approval process. The planning consultant firm Arup is currently working on amending the ADUs ordinance to address these issues. In January 2021, ARG was contracted to develop design standards and guidelines specifically for ADUs on historic properties and in historic districts. The design standards, along with procedures for approving ADU projects on historic properties and in historic districts, will be incorporated into the amended ordinance being prepared by Arup. The design guidelines will comprise a separate handbook intended to complement and assist with the application of the design standards. So, what properties will be subject to the design standards being developed for ADUs on historic properties? Properties beholden to these ADU standards will include individual residential historic properties that are designated at the federal, state, or local level, residential historic districts that are designated at the federal, state, or local level. This includes non-contributing properties in historic districts. For those of you who are unaware, non-contributors are buildings that are too altered to convey their historic significance or appearance, as well as buildings that were built after the historic district was developed and gained its significance. The standards for non-contributing properties will be more relaxed and less stringent compared to those for contributing and individually significant residences. The standards are also intended to apply to individual buildings that have been determined eligible and are listed in the city's historic resources inventory, and buildings in historic districts that have been determined eligible and are listed in the city's HRI. For more information regarding which properties are intended or are included in the city's HRI, please refer to the link in this slide. At this point, you may be asking what the difference is between design standards and design guidelines. Design standards are criteria used to determine whether a project complies with municipal code. They provide direction for making appropriate choices when undergoing changes to a property, and in this case, specifically to historic properties or properties within historic districts. They are legally binding, so an owner must comply with the standards in order for a project to be approved. It's important to emphasize that the standards being developed for ADUs on historic properties are objective. They will be based on the Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties, which are very general historic preservation principles established by the federal government. However, they will be much more specific with little room for interpretation so that they may be easily applied at the planning counter. The standards being prepared by ARG will not conflict with those already developed for ADUs, but will rather add additional parameters for historic properties while still complying with state law. Design guidelines are planning documents that guide alterations and new construction on historic properties and in historic districts. They help property owners to manage their historic properties in ways that preserve the historic character of their neighborhood and city. They assist in applying the design standards, often by providing examples of best practices through the use of illustrations and other graphics. For example, if the design standards allow for the replacement of non-historic garage doors when converting a garage into an ADU, the design guidelines may provide examples of potential appropriate replacement doors, like the illustration in this slide. Unlike the standards, the design guidelines are not legally binding, so they may include recommendations on treatment options that are encouraged, as well as those that are discouraged, but a homeowner is not legally required to follow the recommendations. I'll spend the rest of this presentation discussing ARG's project approach, work plan, and schedule, with time for questions at the end. ARG had a kickoff meeting with city staff and the Cultural Heritage Subcommittee in January 2021. At this time, project goals, scope, timeline, communications methodology, and key deliverables were discussed. Following project kickoff, ARG began to review the previous existing ADUs ordinance, the citywide historic context statement, historic residential design guidelines, and other pertinent background materials, including examples of ADU ordinances and guidelines in other cities. ARG's next deliverable is to create an outline of the design standards and guidelines for city review and comment. Potential topics to be covered in the ADU's design standards and guidelines include location and setbacks of the ADUs, ADU typologies, so a garage conversion, a detached ADU, or an attached ADU or JADU, height, so 1 or potentially 2 stories. We are in the process of considering whether 2-story ADUs are appropriate on historic properties. Architectural style. The city of South Pasadena features a diverse range of historic architectural styles, and the standards and guidelines will be created to address the predominant stylistic types in the city. And required design elements. So, for example, the roof pitch or type, the wall cladding type or material, so wood clapboard versus stucco, entry type, which may be a stoop or a courtyard entry, and window and door types. These design elements will likely vary according to the construction period and style of the primary residence to ensure the ADU is compatible with the historic property. And here's the project timeline. In early March, a postcard survey will be sent to residents to gather feedback that will be used in the creation of the design standards and guidelines. In April, ARG will transmit an internal draft to the city for review and comment. In June, ARG will transmit a public review draft and a second outreach meeting will be held. This meeting will give residents a chance to provide feedback to the team on the draft standards and guidelines. In July, a final draft will be submitted to the Cultural Heritage Commission for recommendation to City Council. In August, a final draft will be sent to City Council for consideration. And in September, the City Council is expected to adopt the design standards and guidelines. We do have a particularly tight timeline for this project because the project is being funded by a certified local government grant through the federal government or the National Park Service, and we need to adhere to the grant timeline. Thank you for your time and attention. We would be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, so is this Kanika and Melinda? So are you looking for our feedback now at specifically on the ordinance, or what do you need from us?
Actually, before we go there, I have another portion of a presentation I would like to play for the board. Is a correction to the statement made in this presentation about design guide not being legally binding. Melinda, can you play that video? Before you start, I think I would like our city attorney to clarify on the statement made about design guidelines not legally binding. We need to clarify that. Terry, are you available?
Yes, thanks, Kanika.
Thanks, Terry.
It's design guidelines can actually be legally binding. They can be legally binding. It depends on how they were developed and whether they are tied to design standards which are adopted by ordinance or resolution. So, for example, if you have design standards specified in an ordinance, and then in order to implement those design standards, we create a set of design guidelines, will have to comply with those design guidelines in order to show that you meet the design standards. So I just wanted to offer that clarification.
Thank you, Terry.
Okay.
That was weird watching myself. So kind of like what Terry was saying, like for example, some city design guidelines are not adopted by ordinance. And like, for example, our design guideline in the Mission Street specific plan is adopted as part of the Mission Street specific plan. So that's adopted by ordinance. And the whole purpose is to implement the standard in the Mission Street specific plan. So those design guidelines are legal binding, and we can then require applicant to follow those design guidelines. And for 80, now, most project in the Mission Street specific have been coming to the Planning Commission or Design Review Board or even the Cultural Heritage Commission for consideration. For ADU, we're gonna develop design standard that's gonna be objective, as well as design guideline to help guide applicant to develop ADUs and make it easy for staff and both the applicant to understand and implement, and it could be reviewed and approved by staff. It would be done administratively. There is a procedure where we could require certain ADU design for discretionary approval. And that is what we're considering, portion of that for our historic, just to protect the historic character. Like for example, the phase 1 of our ADU ordinance right now allow 2-story ADUs, but does not allow 2-story ADU for historic structures. So we're gonna evaluate that type of design into phase 2 and need to develop objective design standard if we're going to allow 2 stories ADU, and should it be allowed above the primary resident, or should it just be only for accessory structure? And if we allow above the primary resident, would that be discretionary review or would that be administrative approval? That's the type of stuff that we're going to do in phase 2. And what I'm looking for the board is really just general ideas of what you guys have heard or experienced and what you guys would like us to address in phase 2 relate to ADUs in historic property and districts.
Okay, great. So if do any of the board members have any comments regarding ADUs and historic in relation obviously to the design for historic properties? You guys can unmute yourselves.
Is this in respect to just converting an existing structure, or for instance, putting ADU on top of an existing garage?
It's for all,
building
so
something new.
for converting existing structure or building a new ADU.
Okay.
But this focus will only be on historic property and in historic district.
And I guess I bring it up because I live on Edgewood, and there's a historic house just 2 doors from me, and they have a ADU on top of their garage, and it kind of, normally I would not think that would be a great thing, but in this case it looks good and kind of makes sense. So it's just a comment about with respect to the second story question.
Thank you.
I haven't had a lot of, I haven't really, as an architect, I haven't designed any ADUs in town lately as of yet, or historic for that matter either. So I wish I could speak from experience directly as to how that's kind of coming down or has went off well or not so well, but I can't as of yet. So I'm still cooking on what I can contribute at this point. Not quite yet there.
So from my experience, I've actually been designing a lot of ADUs or getting inquiries about it. One specifically is a historical home. And the owners, because they are so proud of their historical home, they really want to keep that historical aspect in their ADU. So they're like they're really pushing, they do want to do a second story above their garage. Like, so it's very, it applies to this project because they do want to do a 2-story, but they do want to keep the character of the style of the main house and apply it into the ADU. So I'm wondering, like, from my experience, the homes that have a very strong historical style, the owners are aware of it and they want to, transfer that into the ADU that they do build. So not necessarily will apply to all historical homes and owners, but this one in particular that I've had contact with.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I have two sets of friends. They've each built a brand new build ADU, and they're totally modern behind their historic homes. So, I mean, is that what you're talking about, regulating whether or not they look similar to the home?
Yeah, so mainly just how the board would feel. Like, I think it sounds like Commissioner Carlson said, ADU above the garage is good. It's not a bad idea. So we could explore that. We'll be exploring that in our phase 2. Vice Chair Sai mentioned ADUs, keeping character with the primary resident. That's a good, I think we're probably gonna make that a guideline, a standard, because it is a historic property. And we want to make sure that ADU, if it's built, it doesn't distract from the character of the historic home. It doesn't overpower the existing home as well. So we are considering those type of stuff. Like if you do a 2-story above the garage, and if your main resident is a single story, would you be supportive of a 2-story ADU above a garage behind a single story home? So that's the kind of stuff that we're trying to get feedback from the board and the community as well. And if we do allow the 2-story above the garage, would you be supportive for that to be a staff approval, or would it be something that needs to go to the Cultural Heritage Commission?
I think staff approval would be good. You guys know what you're doing.
I'm definitely gonna write that down.
Yeah, these two, I mean, never mind. I think I'm going off in a different direction.
So I have a thought. I know that there has been precedents where, like, specifically additions to historical homes can be modern if it's designed in a way that it can be removed and not like disrupt the original historical aspects of the home. So can an applicant come and argue that with their garage or a garage conversion or their new detached ADU?
If they're building a new detached ADU, that's something that we can evaluate. If they're building a new detached ADU, and if it's going to be completely behind a historic building, the primary home, is that then be appropriate to do modern? I mean, if they're going to do a detached ADU that's beside a historic home, that's something that we're going to evaluate as well. And that's something we want to, these are questions I want to get the board going so I can write it down and I can bring it back to our ARG, our historian, and have them evaluate what's the best recommendation to do. So I'm not really looking for our board to tell us what we're going to do. I think it'll be good if you guys have additional questions that you want our consultant to explore. So I really appreciate what Vice Chair Sai brought up. Like, if you're doing addition to the primary resident for ADU, could you do it modern? That's, I think, will be a good question that we'll ask our consultant to take a look at.
Yeah, it's, for instance, one of my friends, their home is a beautiful old Victorian, one of the original Victorians, and they put up I have no problem with modern. Half of my house is very modern, very modern. If we're working on the other half, by the way. Is it appropriate to put a modern behind something that is very classically and distinctly different? Is that cool?
Well, it's been done throughout history. I mean,
Mhm.
I
the
guess
play
so.
off of
Yeah.
contemporary and historic, honestly, it all depends on how it's done. There's
I
good
agree.
contemporary and good modernism, and there's really poorly done buildings that they call themselves contemporary and they're not good. So
And vice versa. There's some of the properties that have been designated historic. It's not that they're great. I mean, they're designated historic because of a time period that they were part of, and not all the properties here are wonderful. So that's the other thing to consider too. Is the design. It's really specific per property, and is it worth preserving the character of that particular property or not? And that's where I'd say it's more discretionary. That's my point of view. So I don't know how to formulate that in a question, but that might be a question for ARG. The other component that for me is a concern, right? The whole point of ADUs coming down at the state level, state legislature, we're trying to get more housing, more affordable housing. So the more restrictions that we put on, like you can't build a second story, you can't do this, we're basically saying we want to limit the amount of housing units that we're providing in the city, which to me is a bit of a concern. So is there a way that we can still make sure that these design guidelines or design standards, however they're categorized, are developed, but still encourage homeowners to add ADUs? Because it sounds like when we automatically say, I know most of my friends who have historic properties in the neighborhood, they want to build actually above their garages. That's their plan, but they don't have enough space, honestly, to build something on the rest of the property. So really it's their only option, or they get rid of the garage, but sometimes that's not always feasible for them. So honestly, I feel like it's a limitation if we're not considering that, and we're just saying we're not encouraging more accessory dwelling units, therefore we're not encouraging more affordable housing. And so I think that's something that we really need to consider. I'm a proponent, so I'm recommending encouraging more ADUs, but that's, and again, I don't know how to formulate that as a question to.
No, let me clarify that. So the whole purpose of doing this is really to encourage people with historic properties to put ADUs on historic properties and give them clear guidance on what they can do and what they cannot do. I think a lot of people want to do ADU, but they're afraid to do it because of historic property and they don't know what they have to do or run into and what's it going to cost for them to do all that. And that's what we're trying to help as phase two, is to help provide those guides. And that's why we're asking from the commission, the council, the board members, the community as a whole, is really, we want to promote ADUs, but at the same time, we also do not want to destroy the historic district or the historic character. And how can we balance that? Help us understand what is it this community cherish most. And like, I think that's why there's always a question about, we're not saying no second story ADUs on historic property for now. Phase one does say that, but phase two, we are going to explore it, and we just need to figure out, should it be done administratively by staff or should it go to Culture Heritage Commission? So those are the kind of questions we're asking. So I'm glad to hear that, Chair Hill, that you stress that we definitely want to see more ADUs being built, and that's where we're at. We definitely want to see ADUs because that is another method of providing more housing in our city.
I think just to add, I mean, I'm with that whole 100% to add, the possibility of second stories over garages. I think that's a given. We should look at that and have that pursued. Back to the contemporary, modern, behind a historic building. I think, that's really hard to regulate from a guideline and standards because it's so crazy what can come out of that. It's probably not a good road to go down. If you have a beautiful historic, let's say it is nice historic property, it should relate to that. The ADU should tie into that, and from a material standpoint, from a massing standpoint in some way, different things like that, as opposed to, I've got this glass pyramid on my garage or something, that because you can't regulate that. You can't put enough guidelines out there to stop that. It could happen, and then we have a problem in town. So yeah, I don't know if that makes any sense, Kanika, but
No, I got what you said, that what you're looking to see is that if ADUs be added behind a historic structure on the same property, that it should relates to historic structure in some sort of architectural style.
correct.
Madam Chair, our council liaison, Mayor Mahmood, has her hands up. Could we bring her in?
Yes. Mayor?
Yes, thank you. This is a very interesting topic. I think you need to consider from a broader context. I actually know some folks that moved out of South Pasadena because they could not obtain CHC approval to add a second story on their historic home. And so I think we need to consider, as a city, are we being more liberal in terms of allowing ADUs to be constructed over an existing garage if given the same parcel and the street on which it's located, CHC would not permit the construction of a second story. And I know from having been on city council and hearing a couple of reviews, sometimes it is the construction of second stories where none previously existed is very sensitive because of privacy issues. People don't, if they haven't had someone with a second story immediately adjacent, they now don't want them because they don't want their own privacy excluded. I also think that the context and the fabric of the community is really important. I'm sure if I talk about the house on Fairview, everyone will know which house I'm talking about. And that I personally, it's a lovely design, but it really does not belong where it's at. And I would think as a city that we would want to establish guidelines to prevent something like that from reoccurring. It just sticks out. And it's not, even though it's a lovely design, I still occasionally hear negative comments from people about it. And it's there. It's not going to go away. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I think you brought a really good point about the historic context and that Parapet and Fairview that is modern. And keep in mind that historic district is not a designated historic district, it's an eligible historic district. So I think at that time, it was under the preview of the design review board. Now keep in mind that this ADU, we're actually doing an objective design standard and trying to promote it. So we are trying to promote as much as possible to be reviewed by staff. There is the ability for us to do discretionary review on certain component, such as the two-story ADU, but we'll have to run that by HCD for approval as well too.
So is that the process? HCD will then, they review the ordinance or this for the historic and then they approve it. What happens if they deny it? How does that?
This one we're doing it a little bit differently from, well, first of all, we have to get our draft ordinance review and approved by OHP. That's the Office of Historic Preservation before we can even take it to council for adoption. And because of our strict timeline, we have to get it adopted by council by the council September meeting.
Okay.
In order to qualify for the grant. If we don't get adopted by that September meeting, then we don't get that $40,000 grant, even though if we put all the work and effort into it. So we are strategically working on it to try to make sure we're gonna get a draft from our consultant as quick as possible. We're probably gonna be calling out to this board for a special meeting. We're thinking about doing, rather than going to several different board and planning commission and CHC, we're planning to do a joint meeting to review the draft as a whole and provide direction to our consultant then with community participation. So we are trying to create something that will allow great community input and also input from this board, planning commission and CHC at the same time too, before we go to council.
Okay, great. Thanks for clarifying.
So your summer might be busy.
Sounds like it. Okay, so is there any other feedback that we should be providing then at this point?
I think I got pretty good feedback from this board, so, and we continue to welcome any other input you guys have. So if this meeting is over and you come up with other ideas or suggestions, feel free to email that directly to me and I will forward that over to our consultant to evaluate.
Okay, great, thank you. So then we'll move on from the ADU ordinance. Next, we have comments from our council liaison. Wait, am I, sorry, let me check. Yep, we are there. So next we have comments from our council liaison. Mayor Mahmood, do you have anything to report or share?
I do. First of all, I was very impressed and I appreciate your very thorough consideration of the projects that were pending before you. I think you've raised a lot of good points. I'm so glad that you raised the issue about the planter and about kids jumping over that fence, because it was just begging to be a high school kid, to be a location where high school kids would jump over. And I'm really glad that you identified that. But I'm particularly impressed that you focused as much as you did on safety concerns, particularly with regard to the accessible parking. I am just really, really glad that you're going beyond simply the aesthetic into really practical aspects for the benefit of our community. I do think that the sign ordinance probably needs revision. I'm glad I'm here so that I was here to witness firsthand that there is something terribly wrong if we, as the chair noted, if we make the same standards applicable to grocery outlet, which is literally on the sidewalk practically, as opposed to pavilions, which probably has, with the possible exception of ACE, the largest setback in the city. If they must be very similar, and obviously pavilions needs a bigger sign because it's just such a much longer word than ACE. But I think we need to modify our ordinance to provide for consideration of setback and visibility from the street. So thank you for that. Staff may wish to suggest to the pavilion's applicant that they proceed on a concurrent course with regard to seeking review from the city attorney and seeking a variance. I don't know how busy or how long it takes to get in the queue for Planning Commission, but I know Planning Commission is really busy. And so it may, I know this project regarding the sign and the remodel has been pending for a while. So as not to unduly delay them, you may wish to suggest that they consider that. And that's it. Thank you. Finally, I am sympathetic to the argument regarding separate function for the pavilion sign. And I think that's probably also another area where the ordinance should be clarified to provide further detail as to what we really need. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mayor. We now hear comments from our board members. Would anyone like to go first? All right, I'm going to call you out then. Board Member Younger, do you have any comments?
I have nothing to say. Chair, your person. No.
All right, great, thank you.
Thank you guys.
Vice Chair Sai?
I have no comments.
Okay, great. What about Board Member Carlson?
No comments.
Okay. Board Member Smeaton?
Yes, this is, we're tag teaming on this, Samantha and myself. And this is something that Kanika can certainly play into is we're starting to get a lot of our projects are bigger. Some of these are bigger, and they have the art component to them, which would entail, in some ways, DRB dovetailing in with the art commission. And it seems like there's some opportunities, some missed opportunities here for us to, I don't know, help me out here, Chair, where we're trying to, we want to, maybe even the chair of the art commission comes in at some point to discuss the possibilities of using, of having art on it. Like Pavilions is a prime example.
Yeah. Pavilions, or even just looking at the one that we just reviewed, the Krispy Kreme, they've got what seems like an art element to it, but it's not, they're not going to designate it as public art. And I understand that might not be the order of the process. So, right, they go to the design review board first, then they get the approval, then it later gets determined if they need to provide the public art component or not. But it just, I do kind of feel like it is a missed opportunity here. And even other grocery outlet was another example where we recommended that they put graphics in the windows, and they're there. And while I think it's better than a blank wall, I think had they worked with the public, had they worked with the art commission, we probably would have even had a better design outcome. So I think it's just, is there a way that we can work with the art commission, or do they even have purview? And we don't know that. So Mark and I just had a conversation generally about, you know, art in the city, and then talking about how we've been reviewing more projects that have an art component to them, but that we don't know where the art commission comes in and their
right,
and what their role is and how that impacts the projects that we're reviewing. Not to say that we can't handle the art component of the projects that we're looking at, but I just feel like there is a missed opportunity there. But we also don't want to complicate the process. So we're just trying to kind of understand it better.
As you know, this is not on the agenda, so I can't really discuss that right now. I could talk a little bit more when I have staff communication. You can go and continue.
Okay, we can continue that item. It was just something, like I said, Mark and I had noticed we're getting more art related items, and we just want to understand how we should be addressing them as a design review board, as well as where the public art commission will be coming in and how they'll be reviewing them. And even if they have input, it's something that I think, and if not, then it's something that I think the design review board should be addressing with the applicant, is how they're approaching those art components in the building. And so it's a little confusing for us right now, and how we're supposed to be reviewing it and how we should be addressing it.
So the current ordinance as it's written, and I haven't really been involved in the art ordinance. I haven't dived into it, but the process that's in place is that it gets approval from design review board or the Cultural Heritage Commission or the planning commission, and then they go to the public art commission for public arts. It's an afterward. Actually, this Monday we're having a special meeting at the Public Art Commission, so I'll probably, that's a commission I just picked up for our long range plan as on maternity leave. So I'll probably be spending a little bit more time to look into the public art ordinance and see how we can improve that process. But we are having a special meeting of the Public Art Commission on Monday, and maybe if need to, I'll look at the ordinance and see what else can be done. That may be a discussion between both commission. But we'll have to review the Public Art Commission as well, of their authority and the Design Review Board authority on that, because like you say, art is a design component, but at the same time, we do have a public art ordinance that where the Public Art Commission is the reviewing body of public art.
Yeah, that's what I've worked on lots of projects, not in South Pasadena, but in other cities like LA City, LA County, and they have the public art component. There's a certain amount per project. And usually we engage the public, the commission at that time, like earlier, and then they start working with the applicant on the design. They choose artists. And so it's very kind of calculated. I just don't know if that's what's happening here and that's the goal of the art commission or not. So there's other like precedents that other cities do. And so we're just kind of trying to understand how it fits in and what we should be doing in our role.
Yeah, I understand. Other cities do require public arts, at least go review by the Public Art Commission before it goes for approval. Art is we get approval, then we take it public art. So we'll evaluate that. And also one thing I want to let this board know is that Monday we have a special meeting for the Public Art Commission, and they only have 2 items on. It's just a selection of chair and vice chair and approval of the work plan. On Tuesday, the 9th, we have a special, it's our regular planning commission meeting. And at that time, staff can be presenting a revised draft inclusionary housing ordinance to the commission for review and recommendation to our city council for adoption. So if you're interested in watching that, please join us. It's gonna be on Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. And then on March 17, I would recommend that all the board member join city council meeting, watch the city council meeting, because our Commissioner Smeaton, who is our chair from 2020, will be giving a fantastic presentation to the city council on the March 17th meeting. And at the March 17th meeting, our city council will also be considering the draft ADU ordinance that was recommended for adoption by Planning Commission. And that's all I have to report.
Okay, great. Were there any other comments from the board members? I think we went through everyone. That was it. Okay, just checking that I got through everybody. Now, thank you, board members. Do we have any subcommittees that would like to report or share anything? So I think the only subcommittees that have reviewed anything at this point are the ADU subcommittee. So that was myself and Melissa. And we had worked with the city consultant regarding that. Do we need to do a recap of what was discussed, Kanika?
You could, so you can share that with the board on how that went, if you're up for it.
Melissa, you want to take a stab at it? Calling you out.
Well, we talked we talked a lot about the 2-story, right? And then I think we set some objective guidelines for ADUs in front of existing main residents that have a large setback in the front. There's a, so I think we set some objective standards. I don't remember, I think it's we talked about fenestration in the front.
A certain percent of glazing too that we had required, right?
Entrance being in the front rather than the side.
We talked about the 2nd story as well.
Yeah, 2-story as well. We're saying that we were okay with 2-story.
And no parking in front of the ADU.
Yeah, no parking in front of ADU.
That was another thing.
I
know.
Find my notes.
I'm gonna go back to my notes. It's been a
It was
while.
a while ago.
It was a while ago.
I can summarize that for you if you want.
If you could, that would be great.
Yeah, Kanika, you probably know more.
I know.
Than I can
So at that
remember.
meeting, the subcommittee did talk a lot with staff about allowing ADUs in front of the primary home, and that discussion came up because under state law now, you have to allow an ADU on the property. So then the discussion, if we're gonna allow it, we need some objective design standard to allow it and not distract the character of the neighborhood. And one of the biggest concern that came up was parking, or mainly just pavement in front of the house, in front of the new ADU. And this subcommittee recommended that a certain percentage of in front of the ADU be landscaped to prohibit parking in front and allow the required front doors to be in front of the building and it's prominent. Also to have appropriate window size so it balances it out, not just having small windows where you see blank walls, and providing specific articulation standards for the front of the building. And also this is Board Smeaton favorite is to not allow vinyl windows on windows that are visible to the public.
That was our gift to Mark.
I was waiting for board member side to bring that up.
Yeah.
And the board did talk about allowing ADUs on the second story and provide some really good design feedback on that as well, on how to allow ADUs on two-story ADUs and provide articulation. And I believe that was all going to be done for staff level approval. And that only applies to non-historic properties. We'll be working with this ADU subcommittee for the ADU phase 2 as well too.
Okay, great. Okay, so that was all we had to report for the ADU subcommittee. There weren't any other subcommittees. I know the large project subcommittee, we haven't reviewed anything.
We have not. We do have a large project that was submitted, and our subcommittee member, Chair Hill and Commissioner Smeaton, and both of you are conflicted out from that project. So I'll be working with our alternative for the design review of that project.
So does that mean a subcommittee will be formed, or you're working another large project review subcommittee will be formed with the other board members, or what does that mean?
We have an alternative.
Okay.
So we'll be working with board member side.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Sounds good. Let's see. So those were the updates from the subcommittees, and I don't think there's any other subcommittees that we need to address. If I'm missing anyone, missing any subcommittee, let me know.
I think our mayor have something to add.
Thank you. I just wanted to report, and I'm sorry I neglected to report that last night the city council overruled the call-up of the 7 patios appeal, and so that project is now a go. And thank you so much for your contributions. I know that came before you, and it looks like a lovely design. I'm really excited about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I forgot that too. It was on my list. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you, staff. We will move to adjourn the meeting now. So before we adjourn, I would like to remind that our next regular design review board meeting is scheduled for April 1st at 6:30 p.m. The time is now 9:29 p.m. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Board member side, can you give me a call?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right now?
Sure.
Okay. All right.
You're in trouble.
Yeah, you're in trouble. Okay.
See you guys.
Bye.